Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me as always is my co-host, Austin Davidson.
Heyo.
It is a brand new season of the Stronger Than Steel podcast, Season 4, for the 2019 season, upcoming Episode 1. So we want to thank you very much for joining us on the premiere of this season's episode. We're in a little bit of a different spot this year, Austin, than we have been the previous years. The Steelers are not coming off of a playoff appearance. They're coming off of a disappointing 9-6-1 season that saw them miss out on the playoffs after being 7-2-1. So, obviously a frustrating season, but there's been a lot going on in the offseason that has continued the frustration. So, obviously we know, following the season, Antonio Brown, quoting, like, if you will, quit on the team, skipping practice, and then leaving the middle of the game after he was benched against the Bengals for not practicing. And then that just spawned a whole bunch of different activity by Brown, and then it eventually led to him requesting a trade. With the NFL Combine getting underway here, Kevin Colbert, the Steelers' general manager, was interviewed recently and again yesterday at the Combine, talking about Antonio Brown and where the Steelers are hoping to trade him. Let's just jump right into that, Austin. Colbert insisted that he would gladly welcome Antonio Brown back next season, but if things didn't work out, he had a plan. He addressed the rumors that the rumors about Brown, saying that he would only trade the Steelers' star receiver if he gets equal value in return. And as we already know, he doesn't want to trade him to a team in the AFC North or the New England Patriots. So it's difficult because Brown does carry a lot of baggage with him, and he wants a new contract. Where are some places that make sense to trade him?
Well, I came up with 3 trade scenarios. One of them isn't as good as when I originally wrote it, but my first one was with the Cardinals. I made a few actual scenarios. So I had the Cardinals receiving Antonio Brown and the Steelers receiving the Cardinals' 2019 second-round pick and 2019 third-round pick. I think the Cardinals are like the only team capable of giving up only picks, no player involved, and and one of those picks is not a first round. Since their second is the first of that round, it's essentially like a first round pick, as a guy that's a fringe first rounder will fall there, say like Mac Wilson. The third just sweetens the pot, so the Steelers feel like they completely got a first round out of this. Meanwhile, the Cardinals get to help Josh Rosen in his development. They'll possibly trade down in the first round to recuperate some of those picks they gave up. Ideally, if the Cardinals are making this, I think it would be a really good idea for the Cardinals, because then now you have the first overall pick. You could probably get a draft haul for it, and I would go to the Raiders first and try and get their 4th overall pick and maybe their 27th or 24th, and then some more draft capital, because the Oakland Raiders have a lot from the Khalil Mack trade. So I would try and do that, because the Cardinals' biggest problem is not pass rusher. Ideally, they could still get a really solid pass rusher at number 4, like Josh Allen or Rashawn Gary, one of those guys. But what they really need, most of all, is offensive linemen. And I think trading down to 4, they could still get an elite pass rusher because there's so many in this draft. But also getting 24 and 27, it gives them the possibility to get an offensive lineman to help Josh Rosen. And then also they'll have Antonio Brown next to Larry Fitzgerald, and will give Josh Rosen that extra help in his development. I think it's a smart move for the Cardinals, and that is the trade that I think is the most likely out of the ones that I picked. The second one, this is the one that it isn't really good anymore, because apparently the Broncos are definitely not interested in Antonio Brown, but Where I saw that broke from, it was an Eyewitness 7 guy in Denver, not an insider, and that made me question it. I read the article, and there was no source. It wasn't like John Elway said this. It wasn't like the offensive coordinator. It wasn't Vic Fangio. It wasn't any of these guys. So I don't know whether to believe it or not. It didn't. It seemed more like an opinion piece, but regardless, for my second trade scenario, I have the Broncos receiving Antonio Brown and a conditional 2022 fifth-round pick. And then the Steelers receive Chris Harris Jr., Emmanuel Sanders, and a conditional 2020 fourth-round pick. And at first, this may sound pretty unfair to the Broncos, but let me go into the conditional picks first. For the one the Steelers would give the Broncos, it would be based on if Antonio Brown signs an extension with them. If he does, the pick is void. If he walks or gets cut, the Broncos get the fifth. Now for the conditional fourth going to the Steelers, and this is also why this trade is more fair than you would think. It's based upon if the Steelers sign these guys past this next year, as they are both on one-year contracts at the moment. If neither return to the Steelers get the fourth. If one returns to the Steelers, they get a 2019 seventh. If both return, Broncos owe nothing to the Steelers, and that's that. So that may seem like a high price, but Emmanuel Sanders is likely not going to be ready for the beginning of the next season. I say he doesn't return until October, and he's a high cap hit for them with a $10.25 million salary. In this scenario, by the way, I'm assuming they pick up his 2019 option. They just broke today from the Broncos news that they do plan on picking up and Derek Wolfe, so it's likely that this is going to happen. I don't know why they would lie about that, but this is going to open up $1.5 million. The Broncos will eat $1.5 million by doing that. And the rest isn't guaranteed, but they should still have enough to bring AB and help new quarterback Joe Flacco. I think they get DeAndre Baker, Byron Murphy, Greedy Williams, or another cornerback early in the draft to replace Chris Harris, who is older now. But now my final scenario, and this is the least likely, I think. It's with Oakland, and Oakland receives Antonio Brown, and Pittsburgh receives Chicago's 2019 first-round pick, which is 24, and Dallas's first-round pick, 27. I think it's a little bit too high of a price for this guy, but with how much AB killed his own value, I doubt this one highly, like I said. But if there's one team to pay too much, it is the Oakland Raiders. We saw them give up a third-round pick for Martavis Bryant, and then only extra a fifth-round pick in this draft for Ryan Switzer and a sixth. I am also doubting this trade now because their new general manager is Mike Mayock, formerly an expert draft analyst before taking the job in Oakland. So I think he may want to keep his picks, and his former job was a draft expert. That was his title. However, AB is still talented. They know that. We know that. Steelers know that. Everyone knows that. We also know the Raiders do not have a very good wide receiver at the moment. I mean, they don't really have much anywhere. They don't have good players at most positions. But what this trade does for them, it gives them a guaranteed elite wide receiver and still allows them to use their fourth overall pick and get one of the star pass rushers that they desperately need. I think if there's anything the Oakland needs the most, it's pass rushers. They had almost a historically bad sack defense. It's pretty close, but then they have literally no worry about salary cap. They have $71 million in open space, so there's no problem in that regard. I don't really have to explain why this is good for the Steelers. Obviously, to have 3 first-round picks is huge. It gives the Steelers so many options, even the option to make a power move they wanted and move within the top 5 or possibly top 3 with 3 first-round picks. It's not out of the question. So, but again, this is my least likely scenario. It's more like a dream scenario that the Raiders just decide to do what they did last year. But anyway, who are your potential suitors for Antonio Brown?
Let me play devil's advocate here. So I know some time has passed since you first thought this up, and I know you put a lot of work into this, but when I'm thinking about these trades, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the general managers and the coaches of these other teams that are knowing that they're going to be dealing with the head case in Brown and the fact that he's going to want a new contract. And I'm just thinking about the quarterbacks that Brown is going to want to play with a good quarterback. And I know that he doesn't control things per se, but you think about it, another team knows that he's going to want an experienced quarterback, a guy that can play well, has proven that he can play well. Why would another team trade for him knowing that, say, for instance, the Cardinals have Josh Rosen? Why would they want to bring Brown in when they know how volatile he is And what happens if Josh Rosen, or if, say, they draft Kyler Murray and trade Rosen, why would they want to pick up Antonio Brown and sign him to an extension when they're going to have a young quarterback that's going to be under fire immediately?
I like having a lead wide receiver to help with the young quarterback's development. And with the Cardinals specifically, Josh Rosen was a problem coming out of college too. So I think that's like almost a perfect thing that the Cardinals think they could handle it, because I think the Cardinals are sticking with Josh Rosen. I mean, now it's Cliff Kingsbury. He wasn't there when Josh Rosen was drafted, but need not forget that Josh Rosen was like, it's not comparable, but he was close. He was the Johnny Manziel quarterback. He was the one that was a little bit of like the iffy side, where he had some issues, and I'm missing. The word is not coming to me. He just wasn't like the best personality wise. So I think that the Cardinals already like have that kind of quarterback. I think they could deal with the wide receiver.
Okay, you might be right in that instance, but are you sure that a rookie coach in Cliff Kingsbury is going to be able to deal with that? And do you think that he would want a player like that? Because it's almost assured that Brown is going to blow up at some point, especially with the rookie or second-year quarterback. Do you think that Kingsbury feels that he'd be able to handle something like that?
Probably not, because he's a rookie coach. But you never know. Talent might outweigh that thought, because a lot of coaches do think that with every player like this, they think they can handle it.
You are right about that. You know, a lot of teams think they have the culture that it has to take, and I think ultimately when the move is made, I think the highest offer that the Steelers get will be a result of just wanting the production and wanting the player as opposed to the baggage. It'll eventually outweigh itself, but the point I'm trying to make here, Austin, I'm not trying to shoot down everything you're doing. I'm trying to get across to our listeners that moving Antonio Brown is not as simple as it looks. There's a lot of strings attached to it, as I'm sure you already know.
Oh yeah, there's definitely more layers and layers of this. There's salary caps to look at. There's what teams actually need. There's Antonio Brown's age is a factor. There's obviously his temperament, that if a coach can handle it. There's a bunch of things playing into this. You're right.
And let me ask you, I've seen people on Twitter concerned about the precedent that Bell and Brown may have set by trying to force their way out of town. And what if the Steelers trade Brown to San Francisco, and that sends a bad message that if you push your way out and try to get to a certain team, maybe you'll get there. Are you really concerned about that? Because I am on the surface, but I'm more concerned about setting a precedent of keeping him and letting him stay after all the disrespectful things he has done on Twitter and said or conducted his actions with in reference to Ben Roethlisberger and Mr. Rooney too.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm very worried about it, because Terrell Owens did it first, and it didn't really start a landslide after that. So I mean, this is like a second case, but also I'm really not worried, because as of right now, the 49ers just came out and said that they are not one of the teams that put in an offer for Antonio Brown. So like, it's not even like he's going to get to where he wants, because the 49ers, at least right now, 49ers said. They didn't say they were disinterested. They just said that they didn't put in an offer. So I'm not really worried at the moment about players forcing themselves out and getting to where they want to go.
Mind you, there was a report earlier today that the amount of interested teams in Brown was now up to 5 total teams, that Kevin Colbert said. I decided to just I tried to think about things, and I tried to think about Brown's baggage, and I came up with a handful of teams. I had 2 of the teams that Austin looked at in common. The one that I didn't was the Broncos, because of the recent developments with them. But I had kind of 2 likely destinations that I think are the most likely right now. Number 1, I have the Oakland Raiders, and Austin, you already kind of covered it. I think a big thing with Mayock and John Gruden, with their move to Vegas coming up, I think they're going to be coveting a superstar type of player. I mean, they signed Marshawn Lynch out of retirement. I feel like they're going to maybe try to push to have a superstar player as they move to Vegas in the short future here. I think maybe that push will help the Steelers perhaps if they decide to try to make a move on Brown. I think they might be more inclined to acquire him, and plus obviously there is that trade history where they've made 2 trades in the past calendar year as well. So obviously it was a different general manager, but we know John Gruden is running the show there too. So, him and Tomlin have their connection. So I certainly wouldn't rule it out. I think it would be incredible if the Steelers could get the 2 first-round picks like you said. I think one is more likely, but I think if a team offers a first-round pick, I think more than any other team, it would be the Raiders that does it. Now, as far as when that would be, I'm not sure. The Detroit Lions are another team I was thinking about, and I was talking to Will about this. I want to see what you think about maybe the Lions being a possible destination, because remember, Antonio Brown did go to Central Michigan, so he does have connections to that area.
See, I think he went to Central Michigan only because it was one of his few offers. Because ideally, I think Brown would like to go to Miami, even though he said San Francisco. I mean, his whole family's in Miami now, so I mean, he does have ties to Michigan for his alma mater. But I feel like that's about it. I really don't feel like the Lions need a wide receiver at the moment. I mean, they don't have an elite one, but I like Kenny Galladay. I like, oh my gosh, his name is gonna
Marvin Jones.
Marvin Jones. Is it Marvin Jones? Is that right?
He is there, yes.
Okay, I like Marvin Jones even though he's older. I think that they could just draft a wide receiver and they'd be good. I mean, so I'm not a big fan of Detroit for that reason. I mean, they do throw a lot, so if Antonio Brown wants stats, but no, they got that rookie running back last year. That's also wow. My football knowledge has just went down to 0 since the end of the season. I'm forgetting all the names, but they got that rookie running back that's really good.
Kerryon Johnson.
Maybe they're going to finally leave that culture. I don't know. I feel like in general the Lions do throw a lot though. Matthew Stafford was the fastest quarterback to all the yardage marks, so. Well, it would be maybe for that reason it would be a good place for Antonio Brown.
You're thinking of Kerryon Johnson, the rookie from Auburn.
Yes, exactly it.
The reason I'm also thinking not just the Central Michigan, although I guess the ties there are not what I thought they were. Stafford is a proven veteran quarterback. You mentioned all those passing numbers. You know Antonio Brown cares about his numbers, and they've had a superstar wide receiver there in the past in Calvin Johnson. So. Brown might be a polar opposite in terms of body type and personality from Calvin Johnson, but he knows that Calvin Johnson thrived in the spotlight there, and maybe he could as well. And furthermore, Matt Patricia might be a guy more willing to sign off on that kind of signing because he's not an offensive guy, and his offense really did struggle last year. So I think it's a possibility, and I think it could be a good move. But I was talking to Will, and again, by no means are we experts when it comes to trades, but he was talking about how he believes that the Lions wouldn't give up more than a second-round pick, which is an early second-round pick, but I tend to agree from his perspective. You wouldn't give up more than a second-round pick for Antonio Brown when you have other needs on the roster.
Yeah, they got quite a few, too. They need a few offensive linemen, I think, because they don't know what to do with T.J. Lang yet. They could use another wide receiver. They need a safety. They cut Glover Quinn just recently. And I would say they need some more cornerbacks probably too. I mean, I don't know what Will's exactly gunning for. They need a tight end as well, I feel like. But, so there's tons of wide receiver to me isn't their most important. I'm thinking safety is the most important for them. Safety or O-line.
So from those two teams beyond, that's like a first-round pick and then a second-round pick for the Lions, or the Raiders first and then Lions second-rounder. And then it drops down. I have several other teams here, including the Cardinals, which we already talked about, the Panthers, which I don't think would be a good fit in the long term because of how Cam Newton is as a passer. But I think that's an option because it's an NFC team. And then two other options which are interesting, but I also think are unlikely for the same reason as the Cardinals, is the Jets and the Bills because of their young quarterbacks.
The Jets are interesting to me now because of a new report. They might be one of the. I say the Jets are one of the teams that are trying to trade for Antonio Brown because the New York superstar spotlight just sounds like the place for Antonio Brown. And reportedly, they want a draft haul for the number 3 pick, which that wouldn't come from the Steelers. But what that could possibly do is give them the draft capital to trade for Antonio Brown and still have stuff left over. Because obviously last year, they did the same exact thing with the Colts. The Colts wanted to move down from number 3. The Jets gave them a huge haul to move down to the Jets moved up to 3 and Colts moved down to 6. And they want to do like the same thing this year. So maybe possibly the Jets are trying to gain capital to be able to trade for Antonio Brown and still have picks to work with. Because I don't believe the Jets have a second-round pick this year. So I think they're trying to get some more to work with. I'm willing to bet that the Jets are one of the 5 teams. I think that they're up there because they also their wide receivers aren't the best. They have Quincy Enunwa. They have Robbie Anderson, who's a restricted free agent, but that doesn't guarantee he's coming back. It depends on the conditions in that contract. But I think that the Jets are an interesting one, especially with that report that they want to get more draft capital. They want a draft haul.
We'll circle back to the Jets in a moment, but quick thoughts on Bills and Panthers as being possible destinations.
I don't like the Panthers. I'm a big Cam Newton hater. I don't think he's that good as a passer. I mean, he's still really good with his feet, but like he's very inaccurate, and I feel like I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of him going there. It's also a small market. Buffalo Bills. They need offensive linemen so bad because they have a promising young wide receiver that was a surprise this year, and of course, like every other player, he's slipping my name, he's slipping my mind, but they have a promising wide receiver that was undrafted free agent. I think that they do need a wide receiver though, but they need offensive linemen so much more. It really depends on how free agency goes for them. If they could get some of the good free agent offensive linemen like Mitch Morse or Ramon Foster or Quinn Spain or any of like those guys, the top free agents, then maybe I could see them trading for Antonio Brown. But before, I think they need offensive linemen to protect Josh Allen first and foremost before they start thinking about getting wide receivers.
Well, they did sign center Spencer Long to a 3-year deal, who was cut by the Jets 1 year into a 4-year deal last year. So that's
but Spencer Long didn't do good as a Jet. He was kind of injured and he was never really. Even when he wasn't really that great. Like I wouldn't say he was good. I think they need to get a top guy. If they could get a top guy in free agency, like Mitch Morse, who would be very solid, then I think that they could trade for Antonio Brown. But they really need to work on that offensive line.
I don't think you understood. I was not being serious about Spencer Long being a legit acquisition.
Oh, my bad. I took it seriously.
No, you're good. The talk shows out here in Rochester and Buffalo all were not very pleased about the fact that Spencer Long had been signed and said that if he was playing legitimate snaps, it was not good. So, yeah, no, that was not a very good that was not a significant upgrade for them. But we talked about the New York Jets already. We know they have a ton of cap space, I believe more than any other team in football. So let's transition to the other prodigal son for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Le'Veon Bell. The Steelers announced they will not use the transition tag on Bell. There had been apparently the possibility that the transition tag number would be $9 million after a meeting with an arbitrator, but it also could have been around $15 million. And the Steelers ultimately decided it was not worth it to tag him. That will make Le'Veon Bell a free agent, which he has been looking for the past 2 years. That was his goal. He will become a free agent at the start of the new league year, and it looks like we will finally be able to wash our hands of this whole situation, both Bell and the Steelers. We can talk about some destinations, but the Jets appear to be one option. So let's talk about Bell where he could end up, and as far as the Jets in particular, how him going to the Jets might impact the trade for Antonio Brown.
Well, I do like Le'Veon to the Jets because I feel like he's good for Sam Darnold's development. I feel like he can help him with his great hands, and he has really good blocking. The Jets did, however, come out and say they're worried he got fat, like straight up. They just said because apparently he's 260. That's a big boy. If he's really 260, which there were like memes and jokes about how he looks fat on the jet ski in Miami. But like I just took it as just a bad angle. But like 260 is a lot. So hopefully when he gets back to like actually being with a camp, like he gets a little lower. So I'm not sure if the Jets really want him all that bad, or maybe they're downplaying it so that they don't seem like it. I do think he'd be a good fit with the Jets because the Jets, again, have the cap space. A lot of the factoring into this is does the team need a running back? Of course, because they're going to have to pay this guy a lot. And then do they have the cap space? And there's not a lot of teams that fit both those because what Le'Veon wants is I feel like we're going to get a Kirk Cousins type contract where it's almost fully guaranteed, if not all fully guaranteed, and it's going to be like $16 million a year or $17 million a year. It's going to be something absolutely ridiculous. I like the Colts going into like the entire season last year. I don't like them anymore because Frank Reich came out and said like, yeah, that's not a player we want. And I personally like Marlon Mack, so I'm not a big fan there. But after that, it's just I don't really know many other teams. The Raiders have a lot of cap space, and they have not given Marshawn Lynch a contract. And I think they would be a good fit if Marshawn Lynch doesn't end up signing, but with Oakland just got a deal with an option for Oco Coliseum to keep playing there for one more year with the team option if they want to pick it up if the Vegas stadium isn't finished. So that might keep Marshawn Lynch there because that's what got Marshawn out of retirement. He wanted to play for his hometown. So we'll have to see on that whenever that happens. They haven't given him a contract yet, as far as I know. They haven't really been talking about it much. So the Raiders are another good spot for me. And really, what are some other good spots for you? I really can't think of many more with the cap space. The Browns have had a lot. They didn't need a running back, and they just went and signed Kareem Hunt. So, like, now they literally don't need a running back. They have three very capable ones.
Yeah, they definitely do. The only other team besides the ones you mentioned already that I think could fit the mold, or at least there could be mutual interest, possibly there certainly could be on one end, was the Ravens. When Bell kind of flirted with that on Twitter. What do you think about Baltimore?
I think Baltimore is interesting. I think that they've had a pretty decent offensive line to work with. I mean, last season was actually pretty bad because they were banged up. So, I mean, that would be good for him. It would. I like Gus Edwards too. That's the problem. Like, I can understand them not wanting to bet on a guy that only played for like half a season, but I really liked Gus Edwards in the little bit he played. I don't know. It's either betting on a guy that didn't play football for a year, or it's betting on a guy that got to play for like 6 games and just looked good in those 6 games. Because I don't know if you remember this or saw this, but Gus Edwards broke the record for the most consecutive rushes without a loss of yardage. I think for the NFL.
I had not seen that, but I do know he was very good down the stretch.
Yeah. So once Alex Collins got hurt and he had to step up, like, he was pretty good. So I'm not a big fan of there. I've also seen teams flirt with the other side of Pennsylvania, saying Philly is a good spot, and Philly just decided to let Nick Foles go instead of franchise tagging him. So they probably have the space because the franchise tag for Nick Foles would have been like $22 million, if not more. I don't know how much the franchise tag for a quarterback is nowadays, but so they probably have the space for it too. I don't know. And they also have a good offensive line. I guess the Eagles are a pretty good fit. I'm not sure.
I think the Eagles might still try to sign other players, such as possibly Ronald Darby. I don't I think it's possible, but I think at the end of the day they might not have enough cap space. The Ravens are interesting. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's going to be hard for the Eagles to have like you said, to fit this, because they got a lot of free agent players that they could probably want to bring back, like Brandon Graham, and maybe they want to bring back Vinny Curry from the Buccaneers. Maybe they have a few young players they got to pay soon, and just Ronald Darby's like the top cornerback free agent. Like they probably really are trying to get him back. It's just probably he wants to test the market. But yeah, like the only other place that Le'Veon I think could go is Miami, and it just doesn't make sense for Miami. Miami just came out and said that they're not going to tank, but Miami should be in like full rebuild mode. Like Miami is probably one of the worst, going to be one of the worst teams next year, and to sign Le'Veon Bell wouldn't make sense for them, like at all. I think that they're going to rebuild, and Le'Veon's not like a player that you're going to want to build around or start a build around. Just the reason I could say that, though, is because, like Antonio Brown, Le'Veon hangs out in Miami a lot. Like that's like his spot. I think he lives there as well. I'm not sure on that one, but so like maybe Le'Veon could take like a discount to go there, but like I don't like it. It's just a possibility.
Why would he do that after all this? You know?
Yeah, I'm not the fan.
He's going for broke. I don't think the Ravens are likely either, just because of the way that team already is. I don't think they have Collins, they have Edwards, their other running backs are free agents, but they have Jackson. I don't think they'll want to sink a ton of money into a running back that's 26 right now. But I mean, we'll see. But there aren't a ton of options as we maybe would have originally thought. But again, we'll see when the time comes. All right, now that we've already talked, we've spent a half hour talking about Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. Just a quick bit of Steelers news to get to. Tyson Alualu, the defensive lineman, signed a 2-year, $5.7 million extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is his second deal with the team. His first was 2 years, $6 million. So he's taking a bit of a pay cut to remain with the team. Alualu had 4 sacks in his first season with the Steelers, 0 this past season. You like the signing?
Yeah, I think it's a good depth signing. And he really wanted to be in Pittsburgh, so obviously he took that $300K pay cut. So I like it. I think it's a good extension, and it's a good start.
Yeah, Alualu is not a very good pass rusher, but he's experienced. He can play the run well. He's a high-effort guy, and he'll give you quality snaps. I don't know if I'd want him to be the number 4 lineman for both years. I think ideally you're trying to face him into the number 5 defensive lineman role if possible. But, I mean, he's certainly someone you can rely on, and he's better than the depth that they had there in the past with Cam Thomas and Ricardo Matthews. So I like this move, but I still want to see, other players added that could potentially take his place in the upcoming future. So just a quick overview of the off-season schedule we have planned, the NFL has laid out. What's going on over the last couple days through March 4th is the NFL Scouting Combine, as it occurs yearly at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. So obviously that's a huge off-season event. We'll see a lot of talk being placed around the combine, and we'll learn a bit about the players from interviews and workouts. What do you think about the combine as a whole? Do you like it? Do you think it's overhyped? Kind of just give me your thoughts on it.
I've never really been a big fan of the combine. I never really watched it. I never really looked for it. I mean, it's interesting watching the 40-yard dash, but after that, it's really boring. And the biggest thing is there's no correlation between doing really well at the combine and being a good NFL player. There are studies done and say there's little to no correlation about it. So it's kind of almost useless to watch. It's way better to base off of their college. I think it's also not correlated on what makes a good NFL player, but it's more correlated than how their performance at the combine is. always kind of bored me. And it's like you could kind of see a player's play speed and stuff from their tape. I don't know. To get an actual time on it, it doesn't really interest me.
It's just the first major event since the Super Bowl ends, which is why I think it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I guess it's a big deal in that big deal in that regard. If you're missing football, this season is a little different. There's less missing of football.
Yes, and we'll get to that later on in the episode, but that is kind of the big event, if you will, that happens between the Super Bowl and the draft. Other deadlines or other important events in March. March 5th is the deadline to franchise or transition tag players. March 11th is when you can start contacting and negotiating contracts with pending unrestricted free agents. The new league year starts on March 13th at 4 p.m. All players will become free agents that don't have contracts. Teams can start trading players under contract and can sign free agents. And teams must extend qualifying offers to restricted free agents prior to 4 p.m. in order to require a right of first refusal. In April, we'll learn what the NFL's preseason and regular season schedule will be. Teams can start off-season workout programs, and obviously the NFL draft is between April 25th through the 27th, so that'll be coming up before we know it. In May, that's when things start to get rolling downhill. We got rookie mini camps, tryouts. And then you also have some league meetings, and then in July, that's kind of when you've got June, you got your OTAs and mini camps, and then in July, that's when you have your training camps start to open. You got your rookies reporting first, then your veterans, and then August, that's when Hall of Fame weekend is, the 1st through the 4th, and then by August 31st. That's the final day before cut downs for NFL rosters from 90 to 53, and then the season starts. So that's just kind of your quick overview of the NFL offseason and the important dates this year. So with the offseason about to get started, it really has started, but with our coverage of the Steelers offseason about to get started, let's talk a little bit about some of the other key things that are going to be going on. We already talked about Bell and Brown. Here's another thing that kind of has flown under the radar, but is going to be an important thing to talk about. Linebacker Bud Dupree entering his fifth-year option year. The Steelers picked it up last season. It's $9.2 million. There is a dilemma here. Obviously, Bud Dupree has not lived up to a $9.2 million price tag. He has suffered multiple injuries, and he's played through a lot of injuries, but he has struggled at times, and he has been a decently productive player. He's been serviceable. He's not been a bust, if you will, but he's not reached the potential we all thought he could in his 4 seasons in the NFL. Again, not to justify a $9.2 million price tag, but you also run the risk of him leaving if you cut him. So I guess what is the correct course of action here? Do you just eat the $9.2 million? Do you cut him and try to re-sign him, or do you try to extend him? Because even though extending him might be the easiest thing to do, he might not accept it unless if it's $9.2 million annually. It's a tough situation.
It is tough because we don't really with Bud Dupree. I don't really know if he wants to be in Pittsburgh, because if he wants to be in Pittsburgh, if he's expressed that view, I would say the Steelers should just cut him, let him test the market, and then let the Steelers put out an offer for him. Because his market there should not be a team that's offering him $9 million. There shouldn't be a team that's offering him $8 million. Maybe there's a team that's offering him $7 million, possibly. But more than likely, he's probably going to be paid around 5 or 6. So I think that if Colbert thinks that Bud Dupree wants to be a Steeler, he should just cut him. Say, we'll offer you $5 million a year on that sort of contract, which I think is pretty solid. It's a pretty good amount of money for what he does. Maybe even a little bit too much, and then just see if he comes back. If someone offers him, if he wants to be somewhere else, I guess it is what it is. The problem is I don't know if you got a chance to look at this free agent edge rusher, like the 2019 free agents for that. It's just not very good. There's not a lot of very good guys out there. So if Bud Dupree is gone, I think it almost makes edge because the Steelers don't even have outside linebackers. It's not even like, okay, there's a backup. It just immediately puts Ola Adeni or Anthony Chicklow into that spot. Like that's not ideal. Like they have to draft one if they can't get a free agent then. So it's a little bit of a scary situation, but I think it's a risk you have to take. I think you cut Bud Dupree and see if he comes back for a little bit cheaper because the $9.2 million is ridiculous. What do you think?
Anthony Chicklow is a free agent, so actually Ola Adeni would then be the starting outside linebacker, a guy who's played 12 career snaps.
There would be no depth, absolute zero. T.J. Watt and Ola Adeni. If one of them gets hurt, no one behind them.
Oh, you're forgetting about Keon Adams, of course, the exclusive rights free agent.
Oh yes, of course.
So what we just outlined is the terror of the thought of Adeni being a starter. Not that I think he's a bad player or anything, but I don't want a guy who's played 12 career snaps to be my starting outside linebacker. I think you might have to eat the $9.2 million. You could have a gentleman's agreement with Bud Dupree, but if you cut him, there's no guarantee he comes back. It could be likely, but if he leaves and you can't replace him with someone that's at least similar to what he provided in free agency, you need to make your first pick an edge player. You need at least 2 edge rushers in the draft, at least 2. 2 likely in the first 4 rounds or 5 rounds. You cannot go into a season with Adeni and Keon Adams and Keon Adams is technically a free agent right now too. So you have 2 outside linebackers on the roster if you cut Bud Dupree. He's not worth $9.2 million in my mind. I think he's worth maybe half of that. And you just outlined it. I had been in favor of cutting him and trying to re-sign him before, but I know it's not good to quote unquote live in your fears, as Mike Tomlin so often says, but I'm gonna live in my fears if my starting linebacker outside opposite T.J. Watt has played 12 snaps. So I think as much as I don't want to pay Bud Dupree that much, unless if you sign someone else in anticipation of him being being cut and potentially not returning, I think it's a mistake to cut him. But that's just me. I'm sure you get where I'm coming from, but do you agree?
I agree. No, I think it's dangerous. I'm willing to gamble. I'm willing to play that game because also you could get a different kind of linebacker and try and move him into Bud Dupree's spot because I said the outside linebacker, the edge rushers aren't very good, but KJ Wright is a free agent. He's a different kind of linebacker compared to Bud Dupree. But maybe the Steelers could put him into Bud Dupree's role. Like I don't know. Like if Bud Dupree didn't come back, you would have to be forced to do some. You'd have to be doing some bandaging some big wounds with the roster. But I'm willing to gamble. I'm a gambling man. I'm willing to do it.
There are some interesting edge defenders that could be a possibility. Now, granted, Jadeveon Clowney will likely be tagged, but that's one thing. Clay Matthews is a free agent of the Packers, but he's also 32. I'm just thinking like bandage over if Dupree leaves.
Yeah, John Simon was rumored to be coming to the Steelers at one point, so I mean he might be an option too. You could almost blame him for the reason that the Patriots lost to the Steelers, though. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of him. Terrell Suggs is a little too old for my liking. Preston Smith might be interesting, but he didn't play up to what I thought he would do last season. Then there's a bunch of other guys. Trey Flowers probably going to be tagged. Dee Ford definitely going to be tagged. Brandon Graham might be an interesting option, but he's more of a defensive end than the linebacker. Like, you know what I'm saying? So,
actually,
I'm not sure.
Trey Flowers is not anticipated to be tagged, but one name that I think is interesting that I actually think is a downgrade from Dupree in the fact that they're similar players, but he has even less production is Shane Ray.
Shane Ray would be interesting because Shane Ray's been injured a lot. He was supposed to be really good, obviously, but injuries have really bugged him. I mean, the Broncos didn't really see much in him. They didn't even want to try and keep him, so he might be interesting.
So these are just some names to think about if the Steelers do cut Dupree. So just keep some of those names in mind. All right, let's go back to Antonio Brown and rather the Steelers' offense, kind of how it'll look without Antonio Brown. You got a guy who has put up numbers unlike any other receiver in NFL history over the last 6 years. You have a Pro Bowl running back and wide receiver and quarterback, but you can't exactly replace Antonio Brown with one person. There's an opening at the X receiver position. How do you go about replacing Antonio Brown in the offense?
I really think that it's going to be a lot of bandaging. You're going to have to try and sign Eli Rogers back. I think that's first and foremost, because now I would ideally want the starting three to be Juju, James Washington, and Eli Rogers, and that's betting in James Washington's development going faster than it did last year and actually becoming decent, which towards the end of the year he actually was doing okay. Not huge numbers, but okay. And then you let Justin Hunter walk, of course. You probably let DHB walk too. But then you got to bring in I would say you double dip in the wide receiver position in the draft because you could really take a wide receiver at any point. It's like you could take one in the 7th, you could take one in the 1st, but not ideal, but you could take one in the 2nd, take one in the 3rd, but you get my point. You could take a wide receiver at any point in this draft and they'd be able to fit in. And I think that's what the Steelers should do. I just think that they should draft a wide receiver in the 3rd and probably another one in the 7th with the Bucks pick. And the 7th would be more like a DHB type where hopefully he could play special teams. And the 2nd is obviously a developmental guy, the number 5 behind Ryan Switzer. I feel like that's the way to go about it, and that's the best way. But honestly, that's obviously not a fix for Antonio Brown. I think the best idea is to just invest the money on defense instead. It's not to help replace Antonio Brown. It's make yourself stronger at another position. And I think that they should grab a big free agent on the defensive side to compensate so that they're better on the other side of the ball. I don't think the offense is ever going – it's not going to be the same without Antonio Brown. It's not going to be as good. I think they could do their best to patch it up and make it okay with Juju, James Washington, and Eli Rogers, but it's not going to be the same as if Antonio Brown was there. And I think to compensate for that, you have to actually address the other side of the ball to make your team better.
Make no mistake, you're not going to be moving the ball as much. You're not going to be scoring as much. And after what the Steelers special teams gave the offense and the defense gave the offense, which was incredibly little based off of the fact that there were so few turnovers forced and the fact that the kick returning and the punt returning was not, well, the punt returning was okay, but the kick returning was absolutely atrocious. The offense for the Steelers had to drive further than any other team last year on a regular basis. So when you factor that in, they're going to have to run the ball better, more effectively, possibly run the ball more. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The passing attack is going to take a hit, but you can kind of spread the wealth between free agent acquisitions or draft picks. And I think you're going to need an early draft pick for the X position, and I'd like to see a free agent added. Maybe another one besides Eli Rogers, and like you said, I think Justin Hunter should walk, and I think Darius Hayward-Bay should walk as well. All right, let's talk about some potential free agents at some key positions. So I just mentioned wide receiver, and you mentioned investing in different defensive positions. So we already talked a little bit about edge. So let's talk a little bit about the wide receiver position and the cornerback, safety, and inside linebacker positions, because that's kind of where I'm sure you would agree that's where the Steelers could use the biggest upgrades right now as far as their defense goes. And obviously we just talked about the wide receivers.
Yeah. So I'll start with the wide receivers then. I made a free agent wish list, and starting off is Eli Rogers. I think that the Steelers should sign him off first and foremost. Second is a late-game wide receiver that I really like, and that's Demaryius Thomas. Demaryius Thomas is not going to be ready until about halfway through the season if his recovery is on track. He would have to start the year on PUP and then come back week 8, likely, because of his injury. That would be a 10-month recovery time. I did this math because I really like the idea of Demaryius Thomas, because I had this thought that the Steelers have a lot of slot receivers without Antonio Brown, and that's really it. They don't have a big body, go up and catch it kind of receiver. Demaryius Thomas is just that. And they also don't have like that Justin Hunter, Sammy Coates type guy that's just straight line speed, assuming that they cut Darius Hayward-Bay. I mean, Darius Hayward-Bay wasn't even used on offense anyway, and if they walk from Justin Hunter. So I have J.J. Nelson for the right price as a third on the wish list for wide receiver. At the 2013 combine, he ran one of the fastest 40 times there, and I saw he was a free agent. I thought, why not? I think that seems like a decent pickup if he's for the cheap. I can't imagine him having a huge market. I think that for the right price, J.J. Nelson would be good. But moving on to inside linebacker, because I find this one interesting. Inside linebacker is full of good players. I think he's not as highly ranked, and he's coming off an ACL tear. I really like Quan Alexander. He's not ranked high on many free agent lists, and I don't really know why. He's a good young player just coming off an ACL tear. So, I mean, hopefully, if the Steelers could get him for cheap, I'd be ecstatic, because apparently no one's really high on him. I am. I like Quan Alexander a lot. I thought he was going to be one of the top free agents this year. Apparently everyone else does not think so. He's top for me. I like C.J. Mosley. He's not exactly a playmaker. He's kind of slower. He's more of a run stuffer, which isn't exactly what the Steelers need. But he's a really good player nonetheless, so he would still be good. Then I have L.J. Ford getting re-signed. I really like L.J. Ford. He did pretty good when he did play. I mean, he obviously had his weaknesses. We saw that. But I would like him to come back anyway. Then I have Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks is very interesting. He's a big playmaker. He's really good. And the Eagles I haven't seen trade talk. Then finally I have Corey Littleton. He is a restricted free agent, but if he becomes available, Corey Littleton would be my favorite. Corey Littleton, I fell in love with him this year on the Rams. He is such a good special teams player. I liked him on defense as well. I just think Corey Littleton, because the Rams have no space at all. The Rams are kind of screwed cap space wise. I think they're the worst in the league for that. If they have to drop Corey Littleton, he would go to the top of my list if he becomes available, because I love Corey Littleton. And then safety is another lit market. Safety has so many good guys. My free agent wish list, out of the extensive list, I have Honey Badger first. Last year I felt good about Morgan Burnett over Honey Badger. I thought it was a good thing because Honey Badger hadn't proven to be healthy, and I thought Morgan Burnett was a decent player. That didn't work out. Morgan Burnett definitely did not work out, and Honey Badger proved himself. And I feel like I thought the Texans were going to pay him. So far, no news on that. So I would love it if he came over. Earl Thomas is another one. I think Earl Thomas is a long shot, though, because he really wants to be a Cowboy, and the Cowboys have been talking to him and stuff. So I think Earl Thomas is guaranteed a Cowboy at this point. Then I like Adrian Amos from the Bears, and then finally Quinn Dix for the right price. Really good. And lastly, I just wanted to talk about cornerback. Having Ronald Darby would be amazing. Ronald Darby is the best of a really bad class, and he's coming off an ACL tear, but I think he's worth it because he's a playmaker guy as well, and that's what the Steelers need. The Steelers need a ball hawk. I also like Kareem Jackson. He's older, but he had a really good year this past year. And then I know most people are probably not going to like this, but I like to bet on Jason Verrett. He has been injured 2 years in a row, the entire season, hasn't played a snap of football in 2 years, but for a cheap price, I would like to bring him in. Because when he did play, he was really good. He was a really good cornerback, and if the Steelers could get him for like just over the veteran minimum, I would really like that because I would like to bet on him, even if he doesn't work out. I mean, what's the risk? I like Jason Verrey. But, yeah, who are your free agents you're looking at going into free agency?
Let's back up and let's talk about the receivers then instead of kind of just doing all of them at once. Let's kind of just go position by position and let's talk about kind of the wish list by receivers because I had my own list too. You mentioned Eli Rogers. I think that should be your first target, and I mean he's going to take a friendly deal, I would have to think.
Yeah, should because I mean he tested the market last year and ended up coming back to the Steelers.
And who were the other receivers you had pegged?
On my wish list was Demaryius Thomas and J.J. Nelson for the right price. Demaryius Thomas, I would like to sign a lot.
Okay, I'm not. I don't know much about Nelson. Could you tell me a little bit about J.J. Nelson?
J.J. Nelson isn't a very good wide receiver. I compared him to Justin Hunter or Sammy Coates, but I feel like it's a wide receiver type that the Steelers don't have. He ran one of the fastest 40-yard dashes in the combine history, and the Steelers don't have that speedy wide receiver, and that's what I'd be bringing him in for. He's not really. He would be a good number 6 wide receiver, like the last of the last, or wide receiver 5. But I just like having that type of wide receiver coverage because the Steelers don't have one of that. Have one of those right now. They don't. They only have slot receivers. If they trade Antonio Brown for like the most part, James Washington isn't. But it's just I feel like J.J. Nelson would be for the right price for cheap. I mean, because obviously I compared him to Justin Hunter and Sammy Coates. That should tell you what I really think of him. I just think he's a budget Tyrell Williams because Tyrell Williams is the same type of player, but he's better, and he's going to get signed to a big deal. So that's what J.J. Nelson is to me.
Okay, that's kind of funny because for years the Steelers had 1 or 2 of those burners that weren't that great at anything else besides being a deep ball kind of guy, and now they don't have a single one. So after Rodgers, I went with two players in similar molds to the guys you looked at, but were obviously different players. So my big body guy, I was taking a look at Devin Funchess, and he was a converted tight end from college. Never really put up huge numbers in the pros, but what would you think about Devin Funchess? Again, this is all for the right price. This is not like you're not breaking the bank for these guys.
Yeah, Devin Funchess would be good. I like Devin Funchess. I actually have watched him a little bit because he's been on my fantasy team, weirdly enough, the past 2 years, just kind of chilling there. Never got to start, but I got to see his numbers, and he does okay. I think in terms of throwing, Ben Roethlisberger is the better quarterback, so maybe he could have a better year with Ben than he has ever had with Cam Newton. So I think that would be an interesting one. I wouldn't be opposed to that for the right price.
My main reason for picking Funchess over Thomas was because of age. Devin Funchess is only 24. I don't know if you knew that.
Yep, he's coming off his rookie contract.
So I thought that was interesting. And then another guy I was thinking of more of as a burner that I know I don't think you're as big on as I would be, is John Brown. Now, Brown has 22 career touchdowns in 5 years. He averages 15 yards a catch. He's caught 215 passes throughout his career. Only caught 42 last year. So he's not a real consistent guy, but he's what he does well is he's a deep threat. So I guess you're not as big on him as I am, from what I understand.
Yeah, I'm not as high because I think he's going to be expensive. I picked a budget John Brown. I picked J.J. Nelson might not even be picked up. he could just remain a free agent, possibly. I think John Brown's going to be offered at least a $6 million contract. I mean, wide receivers get paid a lot too. So,
all right. So let's assume that J.J. Nelson would be the kind of budget option, and Brown would be if you're willing to spend more money. Which again, I'm not crazy about spending. Again, most of the money I want to spend is on defense. So if I had to make the choice, I think I could live with Nelson instead. And then let's move to inside linebackers. There's one guy I wanted to mention that I do want back. That's L.J. Fort. I would like L.J. Fort back. with the Pittsburgh Steelers, a guy that's been around for the Steelers since 2015, played significant snaps for the first time this past season, finished with 48 tackles and a sack. We know him obviously as more of a coverage guy. He's not the answer, we know this, but I think it would be a mistake for the Steelers to let him walk away.
Yeah, I agree. I think that LJ Fort should come back. He's at the minimum, he's a really good special teams piece. He had a few blocks this past year, so I think you bring him back just for that alone, if anything.
And then the two guys, you already talked about both of them, but C.J. Mosley and Quan Alexander. I think Mosley is a guy you'd have to break the bank for, and I have never been as high on him as the national media has been, and I think you're right there with me. But Quan Alexander is a guy I wouldn't mind bringing in at all. I think he's only 24 too.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I thought more people would be high on Quan Alexander, because he's young. I guess that ACL tear just really is scaring people, but because this is such like an infatuated market, because it's also got Jordan Hicks, and Deion Buchanan was really good at one point, and Denzel Perryman from the Chargers is getting a lot of looks too. But like I don't know, I'm just really high on Quan Alexander.
I'm right there with you. I wasn't at first, but I definitely am now. I think he would be great. I think maybe there's a concern because the Buccaneers played more of a 4-3 for a time when he was there, but I still think he would be great in space. And then let's move on to cornerback. Who are the guys you were looking at?
For cornerback, my wish list was kind of small. Just Ronald Darby was the top one, but he's going to be really expensive. Then I have Kareem Jackson, who's a little bit older. And then I wanted to put minimum bet on Jason Verrett, because he was really good 2 years ago when he actually did play football and wasn't injured. So I'd want to make a little bit of a small bet on him.
Okay, so I like that you have it tiered from, the top guy in Darby to the veteran and Kareem Jackson, and the kind of the budget option that could be a good, a good reward, low risk kind of situation in Verrett. I would love Darby too. I think that one is a little more unlikely. What do you think about Bradley Roby?
I don't like him. Only because he was asked to be the number one corner this year for the Broncos, and he wasn't very good. With the Steelers, he wouldn't be. He would be behind Joe Hayden, so maybe he'd be better. But I just haven't been high on him. I want to know your opinion on someone else, though. What do you think of Steven Nelson?
Steven Nelson. I actually don't know a ton about Steven Nelson. He was not someone I was looking at.
Okay, because Steven Nelson has gotten a lot of buzz on Twitter lately, and I thought Steven Nelson was trash. I won't lie to you. I saw a lot of people talk about him as one of the top cornerbacks, and he's going to get paid a lot. And I thought I don't know. I've seen him play against Antonio Brown, I think twice now, 3 times. And granted, Antonio Brown is one of the best in the league, but I don't know. Steven Nelson looked trash to me every single time I've seen him play. I'm not sure about that one, Chief. But apparently people think he's going to be a top-paid cornerback this year.
Maybe it's because of the 4 interceptions. I don't know. A defensive back from the Chiefs this past year? No, I don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I don't know where that's coming from, the love for him.
2 other options I was thinking about. They're, again, kind of there's a higher option and more of a discount option. The one that would be a higher upside, I think, is Pierre Desir. The Steelers have had a chance to sign him in the past, but never did. He only has 2 career interceptions, so he's not he's not a top guy, but he defended 8 passes this year and 7 the previous year with the Colts. So, he has done some work. He's 6'1", 5 years in the league. What do you think about him? A 28-year-old.
Wouldn't be bad. I do want a more of a ball hawk for them to get, but if the Steelers get a ball hawk in the draft instead, then I wouldn't mind it. So I guess it depends on how their draft strategy goes.
And then my discount option, which I know you're not crazy about, and I'm quite frankly not either, is Darqueze Dennard as a slot option.
Yeah, it's not terrible for the right price. I'm just not huge on it.
I'm not either. I'm not looking for to only sign bargain bin deals right now with the cap space the Steelers have, but I wanted to make sure I had other ones covered. The one position group where I kind of looked at only higher end players was safety, actually, and you covered Tyrann Mathieu. I think he'd be perfect. He can be kind of a dime backer. He can be a deep safety player. He can play near the line of scrimmage. I think he'd be absolutely perfect. It's, unfortunate that he's only 5'9", but I mean, he had a very successful college career and has parlayed that into a successful NFL career too. I don't hate Tyrann Mathieu at all. I think I'd be willing to overpay. Maybe how much per year? I think I might be willing to go $9 million, $8 or $9 million a year for him, at least the first couple of years.
Yeah, I think I'd do that too because he's just such a good player.
And he is more of a ball hawking kind of guy. He's not a huge turnover guy, but he's made plays before. So I wouldn't mind him. And then two other names I wanted to bring up were Clinton-Dix and Landon Collins.
I love HaHa. I think that for the right price, because his value's gone down. Like when he played with the Redskins, he wasn't very good. So I think he'd be a cheaper option to sign. I actually am not a fan of Landon Collins for the Steelers. I think Landon Collins is a fantastic player. I think he's an elite safety, but I need to specify that. I think he's an elite free safety, and that's my problem. I don't think he's an elite strong safety. The Steelers, I wouldn't want to. It kind of sucks, but like the Steelers just drafted a first rounder, free safety this past year, and like Sean Davis. Sean Davis got messed up with how many times he had to change his position. I wouldn't want to do that to Edmonds, where, okay, now this year you're a strong safety. But now that's the problem. Landon Collins' natural position out of college was free safety, and the Giants tried making him a strong safety. The Giants, and in his first year, he was a strong safety, and he wasn't good. He wasn't a good player until the next year where he moved over to free safety. And that's why I'm not a big fan of Collins to the Steelers. I think he's going to be fantastic wherever he goes, but he's got to be a free safety. So for me, I'm not a big fan of Collins.
I don't mean to contradict you, but I think you might have it flip-flopped. He was listed as a free safety in 2015 and is currently listed as a strong safety on NFL.com and Pro Football Reference, where he's been listed as a strong safety for the past 3 years.
Wait, what? Am I really messed up? I could have sworn, like, I Googled this to make sure, because I thought, hold on, what?
I'm on NFL.com and Pro Football Reference. I just wanted to let you know that it has him listed on Pro Football Reference in 2015 as a free safety. 16, 17, and 18 he's listed as a strong safety.
Huh. I thought he went from free safety. I thought he went from strong safety to free. I admittedly haven't watched a Giants game in like 3 years, but like I could have. Oh wow! I guess I had it messed up. Okay, I'm sorry. He can't play free safety, and is a really dope strong safety. So he's a really good fit for the Steelers. I take it back. I'm sorry. That first year where he played for the Giants, where he wasn't, I guess, a strong safety, and he was a free safety, he was bad. Because I know his first year is bad, and it was because he played on the other side. I know he didn't play the position that was natural, but I am actually shocked because I keep saying this to everyone, and I could have sworn he was a strong safety. I mean, a free safety.
Well, I'm learning with you because I was not aware. So we can talk more about that going forward. But let's move on. Talk about the list of free agents the Steelers have. Just a quick recap. There is still some time to re-sign these guys and apply, tenders and offers to the restricted and exclusive rights free agents. But real quickly, the unrestricted free agents are Ramon Foster, Jordan Berry, Anthony Chickalow, Cody Sensabaugh, Darius Hayward-Bay, Daniel McCullers, Justin Hunter, Nat Burray, Stephen Ridley, L.J. Fort, Eli Rogers, Jesse James, L.T. Walton, Le'Veon Bell, and technically Ryan Shazier as well. You have two restricted free agents in Xavier Grimble and B.J. Finney. And you have, 6 exclusive rights free agents in Mike Hilton, Matt Filer, Jake McGee, Keith Kelsey, Malik Golden, and Keon Adams. Give me one name you want back most of all, and one name that you don't mind walking. And let's just stick with the unrestricted free agents.
Unrestricted free agents. I don't mind walking Stephen Ridley. I've had a bad taste in my mouth for him since the season ended. I think he could just go, and it wouldn't matter. They could bring in a vet presence, maybe like Alfred Blue or maybe Darren Sproles or Alfred Morris for the right price. A vet guy, because the Steelers' other two backs are young, and that's really all Ridley was doing. He was a vet back, but he fumbled when he did come in like twice. So I'm not a big fan of him. And who I want back the most, it's between Eli Rogers, LJ Ford, and Jesse James. I'm thinking Eli Rogers is the most important out of them, because with Antonio Brown gone, I feel like you need to keep some stability at the wide receiver position. So I'm going to pick Eli Rogers. How about for you?
I got you, placing a premium on receiver. Just to go with someone different on defense, I'm going to go with Nat Burray. He was a massive failure, and it's time for him to go. The guy I want back most is Ramon Foster. I like the stability on the offensive line, and you can never have enough depth there, so I want him back. The Steelers' draft picks have finally been announced, the number and the rounds and what pick number they are. So I'll just run down that list quickly for you. They're picking number 20 overall in round 1, number 52 overall in round 2, pick number 83 in round 3, pick number 122 in round 4. They don't have a 5th round pick. They have a 6th round, 2 6th round picks, but the first one is pick number 175 from the Raiders. They also have their original 6th round pick number 192, and they have a 7th round pick from the Buccaneers, pick 219. So all in total right now they have 8 picks. Do you think they make all these picks, or do you think they end up trading to either get a pick or drop a couple picks? Do you think they'll stick with the 8 that they have?
They actually only have 7.
Oh, what's the one I'm missing here? Or what's the one that I had extra here? Was it the 6th round pick, the original 6th rounder?
Wait, what's up?
Did I have too many 6th round picks, right?
You counted the 5th round pick is the problem.
Whoops.
If you don't count that, it's only 7.
My bad. I just looked at the round and I counted it. Whoops. All right, so yeah, 7 picks in total, 2 6th round picks, no 5th round pick.
Yep.
All right.
I'm sorry, what was the question? I got distracted.
No. There was no question. I was just going to move on to let's talk a little bit about kind of where each position is. We already kind of talked about how inside linebacker, safety, cornerback, wide receiver, excuse me, those are all kind of the high-tier positions that the Steelers want to draft early and address in free agency. So let's kind of exclude outside linebacker, inside linebacker, cornerback, safety, and wide receiver. And let's just kind of talk about the other position groups besides that, kind of where you would like to see the Steelers go. So we've kind of already talked about the early draft picks we want to see in the high spending areas. So let's start with kind of the mid-tier level where you'd like to see the Steelers go in the draft and free agency.
So mid-tier, I'm thinking running back, defensive line, and offensive guard. Actually, hold on. That's more end tier. I'll say offensive guard, tight end are mostly mid tier because they're going to need a backup offensive guard with Ramon Foster likely leaving. And I think I don't think Xavier Grimble is going to last. So I think that they could get an upgraded tight end there. I mean, this at the time that I was thinking this, I also didn't think Jesse James was coming back. So maybe it's a little bit less of a need now, but I have tight end and guard as like the mid tier draft picks that should be taken.
I would agree with you. Certainly, as far as tight end goes, you could be losing Jesse James, and you've needed an upgraded number 3 tight end for a few years now. As far as just the rest of the offense goes, you're not going to need a quarterback. The running back that you're going to get is either a veteran free agent for cheap or a late round draft pick. You don't need a tackle. You might need a guard or center, so that could be a late round selection, you would hope, or a low level free agent signing that you hope could become something in the future. So I think tight end is really the only other position you might consider investing somewhat significant money into besides receiver. And then on the other side, I want to see defensive line. I mentioned, I might have teased this a bit with Alualu, but I wouldn't mind seeing a relatively early to mid-round pick used on a defensive lineman. I kind of want to see the Steelers go in that direction and kind of fortify and replace guys like Daniel McCullers and L.T. Walton.
I actually hope they just bring back Casey Sales. I hope Casey Sales makes the roster next year.
Yeah,
He's
right?
dope. I love Casey Sales. But, after tight end and guard, I had defensive lineman because I thought it could be improved, like you said. And then above defensive lineman, I had running back. And that was really the end of, where I'd want something drafted because I personally don't even want a running back drafted. I would just prefer bringing in back because, I don't know, having 3 young backs is not ideal for me. I'm not a big fan. And then that brings the 3 positions that don't need to be addressed. In the draft, I think you could bring an undrafted free agent, but that's specialist. I don't think the Steelers need a long snapper in this draft unless it's, you know what? I think they could get a second round long snapper. I think that's a very important position. I changed my mind. But punter, technically Jordan Berry's a free agent right now, but I think they're going to re-sign him. I mean, they obviously have love for him, and Chris Boswell is already getting competition somewhere, so I think they could just get an undrafted free agent kicker, possibly look to the AAF for that, but I'm not sure. And then offensive tackle shouldn't be drafted, and quarterback shouldn't be drafted. There's already a camp arm quarterback. There probably shouldn't even be an undrafted free agent quarterback brought in after the draft. Everything is accounted for in that position. At least with offensive tackle, you could probably bring in some undrafted free agent if you really wanted to. Quarterback, there's no need. There's literally no need.
I agree with you as far as the quarterback, running backs, and offensive tackles go. I am kind of interested to see what happens with kicker. I think long snapper you can forget about, at least one would hope. Punter's interesting if they don't. I don't know why they wouldn't bring back Jordan Berry, but I still think they'll bring in someone to compete with him. Kicker is interesting because it sounds like Matt McCrane is going to be coming back, but I don't get the feeling he's going to be the only guy in camp. I have a feeling they're going to bring in a third guy. The question is it another UDFA like you said, or do they actually go into the draft and try to get somebody?
It's going to be interesting because we're probably going to look at specialists first. So we'll look at some of the kickers and see if there's a good one. Last year, I don't remember a good kicker. I know you looked at a guy named Pinheiro. I don't really know what that man is doing. I remember the punter better because I remember talking about Michael Dixon and thinking, wow, this punter actually has really good stats and he's going to be a really good player. And what do you know? For the Seahawks, he's the first ever punter to get highlights on Twitter and stuff because he's dope as hell. So that's really the only one I remember from last year.
Yes, Pinheiro, I believe, spent time with the Raiders last year. He didn't play the full season, but he did play some. All right.
Yeah, that's all I remember. I remembered his name. I didn't remember seeing him do anything in the NFL.
I'm attempting to see if I can find any information on if the Steelers drafted a kicker, and if so, when was it last done?
I definitely would not know the answer to that one, so hopefully Google has the answer to that one.
I can tell you the Steelers drafted kicker Matt Barr in the 6th round of the 1979 draft. So you can at least start at 1979 and kind of work your way from there. Gary Anderson was not drafted by the Steelers. He was drafted by the Bills. This is interesting. I'm going to have to check this out, but our early indication is 1979. So,
yeah,
okay.
So not likely.
Now that we've kind of discussed that, let's move on into some different news. You want to take a kind of a trip into what's been going on around the NFL lately?
Yeah, the biggest thing as of recently is Robert Kraft has been arrested for soliciting prostitution. I can't speak. So it's just adds to to just a bunch of other things. We saw with Richardson of the Panthers, he had to sell his team. So there's a chance that if Robert Kraft is indicted, he probably has to sell the Patriots because, I mean, this looks bad for the league. And, I mean, maybe it's not as bad as I think Richardson had sexual assault. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know legality of what is actually technically worse. But I wouldn't be surprised if Robert Kraft has to sell the Patriots. And this is obviously big news in the offseason for them. And it's not good news, but for a Steelers fan that's been dealing with stuff like, oh, yeah, players are walking, to hear that the Patriots owner is doing illegal stuff and getting in trouble for it, like, it makes you feel a little bit better that that the Steelers drama is happening, because that's obviously much worse. He's probably going to get arrested and have to sell the Patriots. Do you have anything to say about that?
First, I would like to point out that I have found the information we are looking for. The last time the Steelers drafted a kicker was in the 7th round of the 1999 NFL Draft. His name, Chris Brown. He was the Steelers kicker for 3 seasons. He, after spending 1999 through 2001 with the Steelers, he signed with I believe he was picked in the expansion draft by the Houston Texans, where he spent the next 8 years of his NFL career before finishing up with 3 games in San Diego in 2010. So, just figured I'd
wow.
give you that information.
He lasted for a long time, 11 years?
He did. He had an 11, actually a 12-year NFL career. So.
Oh, okay.
So.
Sounds more like a puncher than a kicker to me, but besides that.
But yes, I wanted to make you aware of that. And then as far as this whole situation goes, look, I'm not gonna act like anything that Kraft has been, what he's been accused of is, anything short of, disgusting. But I will say one thing: if it were just solicitation of prostitution, maybe that's a little more forgivable, assuming that if that was the only charge. This is an old man. He has been without his wife since 2011. She passed away. And he has a lot of money. I'm not saying what he did was right, if that is what he did, but I feel like the solicitation of prostitution, now stay with me, Austin, I feel like that's maybe not forgivable per se, but maybe it's a little more understandable. The sex trafficking, that's a problem. That is a serious issue, and that's one that I think is something that should and probably will lead to him selling the team. That's different. Solicitation is one thing. Sex trafficking and being involved in a sex trafficking ring is a completely different thing entirely.
Yeah, it's both. Definitely the sex trafficking. I don't know. He only got indicted for the 2 counts of solicitation, though. It was just found that he was. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be charged for that. I don't think he was. I think he was just around the people. I don't know if he was involved in it because as far as I know, he only got 2 charges of solicitation of prostitution. I don't know why that's so hard for me to say, but so we'll see if he gets actually charged with the sex trafficking. If he does, he's going to be forced to sell the team, no doubt.
I was going to say there could be. I feel like there could be some forgiveness involved in the solicitation thing, but again, there's plenty of details that still need to be, released, and there's a lot to be done over the course of time right now. But it's certainly a very volatile situation. It was quite surprising to see, and it certainly puts a dampener on this parade that the Patriots have been throwing since they won their 6th Super Bowl last month, or this month rather. It's still February as of right now. But certainly not something that you like to see in terms of NFL news. This is not something that the NFL or Roger Goodell would really want to deal with, and I get that. Another couple things of news, Austin, you already covered Kareem Hunt being signed by the Browns. Any comment you want to make?
No, I didn't really understand it. My friend actually bet on this about 2 months ago, saying that as soon as Kareem Hunt got cut, he was going to go to the Browns. I denied it. I said that there was no way that's happening when Nick Chubb is lit. and they went and did it anyway. I mean, it's cheap, and they now have a nice 3 running back rotation with Duke Johnson likely going to be cut, I think at least. But I'm not a big fan of this deal, to be honest with you. I really like Nick Chubb as the back.
Keep in mind, Kareem Hunt is likely to be suspended this year too, so he will not play most of this season. I would have to think he's not going to play a good majority of the season.
Yeah, you're right. And just keeps him on the phone call if he ever, when he does get back. Yeah, it's not too terrible.
The Baltimore Ravens have sent former Super Bowl MVP Joe Flacco to the Denver Broncos for one of the Denver Broncos' 4th-round picks. So I guess Case Keenum, that experiment is over with. It's Joe Flacco's team now, apparently.
Yeah, no, not a fan of this move either because I really don't know what the Broncos are exactly doing. The Broncos look like they want to rebuild, but trading for Joe Flacco seemed like a win now move. Their team doesn't look like a win now team though. That's the problem. So they're in what I call Bills hell, or where they're not going to be good enough to make the playoffs, but they're also not going to be bad enough to get a top pick now. It's because they don't know they don't even know what they want to do. Do they want to win? Do they want to just tank and be bad and just rack up draft picks? I don't know. They confused me. This deal I didn't like it. I also thought Case Keenum should have gotten another shot with a new head coach because I thought Vance Joseph was inept. I thought Vance Joseph was a big problem for the Broncos. I thought he was a big part of the reason they did so bad. Case Keenum wasn't perfect, but I mean we saw him thrive with Minnesota, and I think maybe with a better head coach he could have done better. But I guess we'll never know. I mean, John Elway said he'll have him back, but like he said, he's going to trade him if he doesn't want to stay. So.
Yeah, if I'm Keenum, I'm trying to get out of there, and I'm not sure. The move for Flacco is kind of confusing to me, but maybe a change of scenery is what Joe Flacco needs. I don't know. Sometimes John Elway confuses me, but I guess we'll see kind of over the coming months with their draft process and their free agents kind of where they're trying to go. The Ravens signed slot cornerback Tavon Young to a 3-year, $25.8 million extension. We already talked about Landon Collins a bit. He has said that he will sit out the spring workouts and maybe longer if the Giants decide to franchise tag him. They still might, but it looks like he wants to get out of there. And as of today, the Chiefs are apparently fielding trade offers for outside linebacker Justin Houston. They are trying to get some cap space so they can franchise tag other outside linebacker Dee Ford. What do you think about that?
I think it's a good move because they also need to pay a bunch of young players coming up. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is on his 2nd year, so he's good, but they got to pay Tyreek Hill and Chris Jones. And Tyreek Hill and Chris Jones are going to demand big contracts. So, because, I mean, obviously wide receivers and edge rushers are like the top paid positions in the NFL. So they needed to make room somehow. And Justin Houston, despite being a good player, he was injury-riddled this past year a lot, and it's just he's older now, so it's time to move on to newer and younger things. The Chiefs are a new young team, and just Justin Houston doesn't really fit that anymore. So it's unfortunate because Justin Houston was with them through their bad times when they were 2-14. But I mean it is what it is. It's a business.
All right, a couple more things to get to. The Pittsburgh Steelers, 9-6-1. We're in the offseason now. What are we going to need to see from the Steelers this offseason to think that they can make a legitimate run at Super Bowl 54? And obviously, let's remember they are losing Le'Veon Bell, although they technically already lost him last year, and they'll likely be without Antonio Brown next season. So I guess what is it going to take for them to become a contender again in your eyes?
They need to make a big splash on the defensive side. They need to do a better job at trying to replace Ryan Shazier 2 years after losing to his spinal cord injury. That's what it's going to take. They're going to need to get one of those top defensive free agents, something we're not used to because they haven't had the cap space. But now with Le'Veon Bell leaving, they have a little bit of cap space to work with to get one big free agent. Then if that free agent is a ball hawk, they need to draft a ball hawk in the draft. It's just how it is, because they didn't have a ball hawk last year. They didn't make enough defensive changes on the coach's side to really say, like, things are going to change. So they need to add through the draft instead. And that's probably what it's going to take. And if it's cornerback round 1, it's cornerback round 1. If it's maybe another safety round 1, if there's a good enough one, I'm not a big fan of safety in round 1, but I mean, maybe that's the move. They need to fix the other side of the ball now more, even though they're losing Antonio Brown. Then they also need to they need to fill in the gaps a little bit. They do need to get a wide receiver somehow when Antonio Brown leaves. So there's that as well. And that's really it. That's the best way that they could become a contender again. What do you think?
I mean, the simple way you look at it is they need upgrades at inside linebacker, edge rusher, safety, cornerback, and wide receiver. And there's only so much they can do, but you might be able to get by with the play at certain positions, i.e., the edge or safety. You need to be able to add a legit cornerback. I think you need to be able to add at least, ideally, you'd be able to add a starting cornerback, a wide receiver that can play significant snaps, maybe not a ton, but a guy that can at least contribute, and an inside linebacker that is an every down kind of guy. That's a huge ask from either your first 3 picks, or maybe you can get it done with a free agent and your first 2 picks. I think it's going to take some combination of an inside linebacker that can be a 3-down guy, a cornerback that can at least be a starter, and a wide receiver that can at least be a number 3 guy. I think that is kind of the baseline for where you're looking, kind of your goals if you're the Steelers.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that's a good way to look at it, because it's all the positions they need. So it's going to be interesting. That's what it's going to be. This offseason is a very interesting one compared to previous ones because of what the Steelers have planned. Because you also have to imagine, we don't know what the Steelers are going to get draft capital-wise for Antonio Brown, so they're probably going to have extra picks to be able to do some more stuff with that. So maybe getting some of these other positions filled might be a little bit more feasible.
Indeed, but again, that is what the next few months are for, and hopefully they'll be able to do it. But I guess let's take a step back. And we had talked about the NFL Combine and it being a football event, and how maybe missing football has been a little different this year. Obviously, we're talking about the Alliance of American Football. The 8-team football league began play 3 weeks ago, and it hasn't been huge in the sense that it's not the NFL, obviously, but it has had pretty good ratings throughout. It just recently got a $250 million investment from the Carolina Hurricanes owner of the NHL, and they've had better ratings than, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, they had higher ratings than the NBA game of the night between the Houston Rockets and I believe the Oklahoma City Thunder from a few weeks ago. So, it's not a quote-unquote developmental league. They like to think of themselves as a supplemental league. And through 3 weeks, it's been interesting. And this 8-team league, talk to me a little bit about kind of how you've enjoyed watching it, because I know you have enjoyed watching it, Austin, and kind of where you are on this league and kind of where you hope it goes.
Well, as listeners probably know from listening to this podcast, because it's had to come up like 5 times or 6 times or something like that, I hate college football. I think it's messy. I like the pros better. I don't really understand the love for college football, so I never watched it. However, the AAF feels like a nice in-between. It feels like these guys are better than college players. They're just not NFL pros yet, but it looks like it's almost like it's like they said, it's a supplemental league. It's like they're about to be there. So it looks a little bit more professional. The games aren't like ridiculously messy, and it's just, at least to me, and it's been fun to watch. And it's been really interesting because you kind of have to learn every player now. It's like the NFL. I'm slowly learning what players are good with everyone else and stuff like that. Before the league year started, I decided, based on color scheme and logo, to be a San Diego Fleet fan. I almost was an Iron fan, very close, because I thought it would be cool to be a fan of Iron and Steel. But the Fleet's logo is the best in the league. That's an opinion, but I truly believe it. And then I looked at rosters, and I fell in love with the Fleet's roster, even though the Iron had a lot of Steelers players, ex-Steelers, I should say, some correct, but what's it called? So I've been a San Diego Fleet fan since before week 1. Even got a San Diego Fleet hat, and it's been really fun. It's different because you just get another perspective, because now the Fleet aren't as good. They're not the best team in the league. The Iron and Apollos look to have that, but it's been like really fun. It's like watching football for the first time again, because you get to like learn it all over again. It's all these new players, and like I've already fell in love with like DeMontre Moore, who's been like one of the best pass rushers in the league so far. He's a Fleet player. I really like Jaquan Gardner, who's the Fleet's running back, and he was an ex-NFL player, and it looks like he's going back there. And it's really easy to root for these guys to try and get back to the NFL. And then I've been watching guys that were on the Steelers practice squad like last year on like the Iron. There's Casey Sales. I said I love him and I hope he comes back, and because he's playing really well in the AAF, he's absolutely dominating. Another guy on the Iron that was on the Steelers 90-man last year, and that's Jamar Summers. Jamar Summers is, I think, the second-rated cornerback in the AAF this year. They're both thriving, and it's really fun to watch, like these developmental guys. And there's some other guys that, like, we looked at. Now that we've done draft profiles 2 years, one of the Fleet's tight ends is Marcus Baugh. I looked at Marcus Baugh a draft profile just this last season. Like, he's a tight end coming out of Ohio State, and I like knew that, and I'm like, it's really fun to watch like that way, because like I looked at this player, like I know what he's about. Like I don't really know how to explain it. I'm not the best with words, but it's just been a really fun experience. It's basically, it's almost like getting remarried to football. It's like you're going on your second honeymoon, because you're like learning all over again, and it's all fun, it's all new, it's all like fun again, and that's what the AAF is to me. It is a supplemental league, and I understand that these guys aren't as good as NFL players, at least not all of them. Some of them might make it into the NFL and thrive, but it's just been fun, and they do things some things are a little bit better than the NFL. Take, for example, there's no onside kicks. I said offside. Onside kicks, you have to go for it on a 4th and I think 12 or 4th and 10. I'm not even fully 100% on the rules yet. I'm not, like, I'm still learning with everyone else. But I found that interesting. We saw it happened against the Iron. Who did it? Who did a 4th and 10 conversion?
It's a 4th and 12 from your own 28, so you need to get to the 40-yard line. But it was Matt Sims who threw to, I want to say it was Centavius Jones, but I'm not positive if that was correct.
Yeah, so it happened just the other day for the first time. It's really interesting. There's no kickoffs. There's there's no PATs. I'm sorry. No, I'm messing up my kicking things. No PATs. You have to go for 2. Makes it even more interesting. The scores are a little bit wacky compared to normal football games like college and the NFL. And it's just really interesting, and I want to hear what your take is on it, because I've fallen in love. I love the AAF. Like, I watch it every week now religiously for the Fleet, just like I would a Steelers game.
It is not the NFL, and it knows that it's not, and it's not trying to be. And I think that is part of the beauty of this league, and that it unlike other leagues that have failed in the past, like the first iteration of the XFL, the USFL, they all tried to beat the NFL, and we all know that the NFL is top dog. And I think what we've seen is that this league is kind of becoming almost a land of second opportunity. I mean, I just went to the website itself, and one of the top stories is Apollo's running back Johnson grabs hold of opportunity, doesn't plan on letting go. It's talking about Dearness Johnson, the best single game rushing performance of anybody on Orlando this season. You know, it's talking about guys that didn't get the perfect storybook, you know, type of career in the NFL or in college. Like you said, guys that maybe weren't all-stars in college, that didn't go on to have great NFL careers, or maybe they were great college players like Trent Richardson from the Birmingham Iron, who struggled in the NFL, were considered, you know, a bust, and here they have a second opportunity to prove themselves. I mean, every team has players like that. I just talked about Dearness Johnson from Orlando. You've got Trent Richardson from the Birmingham Iron. One player that I'm sure you know of, and he had a big game on Sunday, is Nelson Spruce, the wide receiver. He was cut by 4 different NFL teams over the past 3 years. And, you know, he's a former second-team All-Pac-12. You know, he was an accomplished player, but he was undrafted, and here he is. He's, you know, this week he was fantastic. Another player is Zach Mettenberger, who just became the starting quarterback at Memphis. He started 14 games in the NFL. He was with the Steelers. You might remember, I think that was the last place he played in the NFL. He's getting an opportunity now to show what he can do. And then you look at other teams. There's Brandon Oliver, the running back formerly of the University at Buffalo, and he played with the Chargers for a while. He's a solid running back for the Salt Lake Stallions. DeMarcus Ayers, who I know is one of your favorite players in this entire league, Austin, a guy that couldn't stick with the Steelers or Patriots. He's been one of the standout wide receivers on San Antonio. Matt Sims hasn't been great for Atlanta. Nobody for Atlanta has been that great, but Matt Sims is a former NFL backup. Denard Robinson is another name. You know, there's just, this league is full of players that are getting second chances. And again, it's not perfect football. We see it all the time with this league. It's not perfect, but they know that it's not. And it's still entertaining enough that I'm interested in it, and a lot of people are interested in it, and that's the thing. They only were together as a team for about a month before the season started. This all started really quickly. They're only going to get better as the year goes on, and it's not like the season is too long. It's only a 10-week regular season, and then you've got 2 weeks of playoffs. It perfectly bridges the gap to work as a spring league, you know, late winter to spring league. And I think it's been fantastic. I've watched every single game, at least the majority of every single game that has occurred through 3 weeks. So, you know, that's 4 games a week. So I've seen, you know, 12 games already, and some of them have been entertaining. Some of them haven't been as entertaining. But even the first 2 games between San Antonio and San Diego in week 1, which was a defensive struggle. That was a 15-6 win for the Commanders over the Fleet, and a blowout win, I believe it was 40-6 by the Orlando Apollos over the Atlanta Legends. I'm still enjoying it, and I've enjoyed it so much. And Austin talked about the Fleet. I decided to go with Birmingham because they are technically an affiliate of the Steelers, and they have several former players like Austin mentioned, and Casey Sales and Jamar Summers, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's a league that I think is more primed for long-term success because not just of the big financial influx of cash they got from the Carolina Hurricanes owner, not just that, but because they are capitalizing on the mistakes. They've learned from the mistakes of the other leagues that they have fallen before them, and they're working more closely with the NFL than any of these other leagues have. And I think that's really going to help them set up for long-term success. And I don't know how long this league can last, but I think it could last a long time. I'll be curious to see how it works when the XFL starts, but I think that the XFL kind of trying to go maybe more against the NFL, while this league is trying to kind of work almost in conjunction with the NFL, is going to do this league justice in the end. And I've really enjoyed it, and I hope it continues. And I'm hoping maybe in the future we get some expansion. But there really aren't many things that I don't like about this league besides watching Atlanta.
It's true, though. Atlanta, unfortunately, lost their offensive coordinator like a week before their first game, which was Michael Vick. And they actually, I thought they were the most talentless roster coming in. I thought they were the worst team. Memphis underperformed greatly with how much NFL players they had on there, and just Christian Hackenberg's a bad quarterback. But now they're better. Atlanta's just the worst team, unfortunately, and yeah, they are pretty rough to watch because of that. They're just not very good all around.
And mind you, their head coach also resigned shortly before the season too, so they are a mess. Their left tackle, according to PFF AAF, is the best left tackle in all of the league. So imagine if he wasn't there. That would be awful.
Is the left tackle King, right? It's King?
I believe so. I could be wrong, but I think that's his name.
He actually got hurt this past Saturday, because I remember seeing that. I remember because I followed the PFF AAF as well, and I saw they've been doing offensive and grading them, and then they said their only good player got hurt. I don't know what his status is, but I think he actually is hurt at the moment.
Man, well that's just Atlanta for you, but. Yeah, I mean, overall, I've really enjoyed the league, and it's something that I have gotten behind, and I think I will be behind for as long as this league is around.
I agree. It's been fun, and it's gonna make that gap in between NFL football that much better, because right now, I'm missing football a lot. It's really my only sport. I am a hockey fan, a new hockey fan, but it's not the same feeling as football as of right now. So the AAF is doing me good, because I'm also playing fantasy. Fantasy is my favorite. Part of the reason I ever got into football so much is because I just love fantasy football, and I'm gonna tickle my own horn. I'm one of the best fantasy players I've ever. I'm conceited in that sense. I'm really good, and John can tell you right now, my team roster for the AAF league right now is lit.
Austin's just talking shit because he beat me twice.
I beat him twice, and I joked with him because he had to change the roster, because I told him I would. We were originally supposed to, for 6 times, as a 4-man league. Obviously, there's only 8 AAF teams. So I told him he didn't want these hands 6 weeks in a row. So I joked that he changed the schedule just because of that.
I mean, I certainly can't justify continuously doing it, because I'm in trouble, even with Trent Richardson. But anyways, we can have a discussion about that at another time. But yeah, that was basically something. I don't know if we're going to talk about the AAF every week on this podcast. I don't know if we'll kind of see how things go, but if listeners don't care, or they say they want to hear, I'm okay with talking AAF. I'm not sure if we'll need to go in depth about it, because that could be its own podcast, but I feel like maybe we can just talk a little bit about it weekly.
Yeah, I'd be down. I've been having fun watching the AAF. I wouldn't mind talking about it just like the NFL, because I've been having a good time watching it.
Absolutely. So I think that'll wrap things up for now as we kind of move forward into our pre-draft process. And I think our plan, like you said, was we'll kind of go over the specialists first. That's kind of usually how we do things, and we might fit in quarterbacks with them as well. So I guess we'll get into that soon.
Yep, we get to start one of the exciting things of the year for NFL-wise. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy doing the pre-draft profiles and learning about guys that I would have never known of because I don't watch college football. So it's going to be interesting. Right? Oh, before we even look, I just want to claim it now that my first draft love is Byron Murphy, the cornerback out of Washington. I just want to say it now and say it early so that if I'm right and he turns out to be lit, I could come back to this podcast and say before even the combine happened, well, I mean the combine's technically happening right now, but I picked him. I think the other year I picked Karis McKinley. In the first year, I can't remember. But Byron Murphy's my first draft love.
The first year was Tack McKinley.
Oh, the first year was Tack McKinley. Yeah, I wasn't really in love with anyone last year. Lane Vander Esch was dope, and he turned out to be dope, but, like, I wasn't really in love with anyone last year. Royce Freeman, too. Royce Freeman did okay, but he got overshadowed.
All right. We'll wrap things up for now because we ran a little long, but obviously a lot to get to as we had some time off, and we'll be getting into things shortly here with the pre-draft process coming up. So thank you, as always, for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Season 4 underway here, and we appreciate, as always, your support. You have any questions about the show, please feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. If we ever get some, we'll be happy to answer them on air here for you. So I say on air, but it's a podcast. But regardless, we'd both be happy to answer some questions and just feel free to ask us some. But until next time, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Austin, you have a terrific night. Thank you again for joining me. It's been too long, and I'm looking forward to getting things ramped up here shortly.
Same, dudes. I missed podcasting and talking about Steelers football and just football in general.
Have a terrific night, everybody.
Have a good day.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.